Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Gail. We are excited to be here with you this afternoon, and we get so pumped talking about the FSS competency course and the world of family support. On every slide, you will see the power of a peer. Yay, that is those of us who know and walk every day what it means to be a peer support. And at the bottom of every slide, there is this saying: family support specialists are personally invested, collaborative problem solvers with lived experience. We're going to talk just a little bit more about that in a second.
Okay, so you guys are already really good at understanding directions. We had dropped in the chat for you guys to share with us your name, the state that you're from, and also if there is a family support or family peer training in your area. And thank you guys for putting that and sharing that in the chat with us. And also one thing that you like to learn or take away from today's training. So we are excited to spend some time with you today.
And Monique, do you want to share your name?
Oh, well, that would have been nice. So, hello, my name is Monique Jenkins, and I am a program director with Tennessee Voices. Let's see, and I am also a certified family support specialist in the state of Tennessee. My certification number is 73. So I'm the 73rd person in the state of Tennessee to become a certified family support specialist.
Okay, and Tennessee Voices is a family run organization, and many of you know what that means is over 50% of our board are parents and caregivers. There are just two things we want you to remember today. The first is a definition of a family support specialist, which is at the bottom of every slide. And FSSs are personally invested, collaborative problem solvers with lived experience. We have Dr. Linda Gargan to appreciate for that, along with Tony Donnelly and Denise Baker, who gave us that definition in a presentation they did with SAMHSA. The second thing we want you to remember, and you know this in your heart, is that the FSS is the face of hope that guides the path of resilience. And that is the foundation of recovery and the power of a peer. Peers are powerful in helping families.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we're going to jump right in. So the competency course kind of defined uh, is outcome oriented, demonstrate mastery, skills practice, and real work application. So one of the things that we do is, and the primary goal is to ensure that when students complete this competency course, that they have a set of competencies or skills by the end of the course. We want them to be able to demonstrate mastery. Lord, get my words right. So we want students to be able to display that they understand and have the ability to apply what they have learned during the time that we're having the class through assessments, through projects, through practice tasks that we'll do. And we do this through testing. So we also do skills practice. Skills practice is one of my favorite ones, and we actually follow a family during the whole course, where we keep using them to be able to build on our skills and the things that we've learned during the class. And then, of course, we'll talk about real life application, and we're going to get into more of this as we keep going.
So, this is a competency course, and just what does competency mean? It means the goal is to move from knowledge of what you need to do to being able to do it. And we do that through real life application throughout the course, which we have participants move through a series of tasks that reflect the real work that we do. That is so critical. The course is set up so the participants gain knowledge, skill, and this next one's important, desired attitudes. The way we approach families is so very critical. Here are some of the typical tasks that we have participants in the class do. We have them apply each of the 5 competencies. And these competencies, thank you, Federation, were developed by the Federation of Families. We didn't have to create that. The Federation did a lot of national work to create the key competencies for a family support specialist. But as they move through the 5 competencies in vignettes all through the course, we also identify the main system of care principles, stressing and discussing how important it is to have the least restrictive environment and caregivers as full partners. We recognize, empower, and know that caregivers know their children absolutely the best. So, what are some of the things we have them do? They develop a self care action plan. They do a behavioral reenactment of 4 styles of parenting. They complete a strength based assessment. They practice writing progress notes. They complete a plan of care. They develop a safety or a crisis plan. They even practice how do they introduce themselves to engage families in the work the families want to accomplish. And most importantly, there are about 6 ethical scenarios. They problem solve those ethical dilemmas that we each face as an FSS. And if you look at this pyramid, the first is okay, you know what you need to do. That's the novice level. Then you have to be able to interpret and apply. You know how. Case presentations, some of the tasks I described. You have to be able to demonstrate you know these skills in working with families. And you see those little letters, OSCESs. That means you move through a series of tasks that are real practice. And then you perform in practice. You really show your competence when you return back to work and get that positive feedback from your supervisor. So you go from novice to expert with the appropriate knowledge, skills, and attitude.
So let's talk about what the course looks like. So the FSS course is 40 hours of training. that focuses on five competencies. And Kathy kind of already talked about those. These competencies focus on the work with families, and it embodies aspects of the wraparound process. It also incorporates the system of care values and principles. And with all of this, it allows the FSS or the peer to be able to do this work in a professional manner. In Tennessee, the FSS, the Family Support Specialist, achieved certification with the Tennessee Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services. They're our partners in this. All right, so let's talk about the five competencies and what they do and what they look like. So they are resilience, recovery, and wellness, affecting change, resources and natural supports, system knowledge and navigation, and professional responsibilities. In the coursework, we develop a skill in each and every one of these areas, in each of the five competencies, and we also give the participants an opportunity to be able to do some real life work in each of these areas. For example, let's talk about wellness and resiliency. There is a there is a practice in doing a strengths-based assessment that we do with our families. What I'm sorry, with our participants. So, what kind of happens with this? For example, with the wellness and resiliency competency, participants actually practice a strengths based assessment. Sorry, trying to let people in. Um, what occurs is we have groups, we'll have the vignette, and we've had groups to be able to go through this, and they've been able to find so many strengths in the families that we serve in this particular vignette. We, at one point, I think we had a group that found 25 strengths in the vignette. Now we have some groups that struggle to even have find four because it can be just a really challenge to be able to find what is a strength. What does that look like? And it is also so important for us to remember as peers that support families that guess what? They have been in this world, walking this earth, taking care of this family the whole time without us. And all we want to do is pull out those strengths and make sure that they are aware of that as well. So, how do we do this? All right. So, now we're going to put you guys to work because we have talked a lot. And we are going to, you guys can read this, and I'm going to read it as well. And what we want you guys to do is, after we read this, we want you all to put in at least a minimum of one strength that you see in this family. All right, so I'm going to read it to you guys really quickly. Tanya Perkins was referred to XYZ agency by the guidance counselor at her son's school. After an initial assessment was assigned to a family support specialist. Tanya is a single mom with an 8-year-old son, Brian. Brian is more active than most boys his age. His mother says he doesn't concentrate at home, and his teachers complain about the same thing. He spills his milk often and leaves messes at the dinner table. Many times while he is playing, Brian will start with one toy, but then is quickly distracted by something else. He is reckless and impulsive, runs into the street in front of cars. Tanya is struggling to understand and handle Brian's behavior. Tanya often feels frustrated with his behaviors and is unsure about appropriate discipline. There is limited time that Tanya has support with Brian. However, his grandparents interfere with his discipline by saying, boys will be boys. For example, lately he gets off the school bus and runs across the intersection that is not protected by flashing lights of the bus. So his friend John was asked to remind Brian to watch for cars. However, John has taken to running in the street with Brian. All right, so what we want you guys to do is drop it in a chat. What is a strength that you see with this family, with Brian and Tanya? Even the grandparents, what are the strengths that you guys see? Tanya wants to understand this willingness to seek help. That's a huge one. Okay, what else we got? Mom wants to problem solve. She has natural supports. Yes, support of others, willingness to accept help. Mom is able to share that what behaviors she sees and is reaching out for support. Tanya's commitment as a parent, boundaries. Okay, yeah, that's a good one. Natural and other supports. Okay. What else do you see as a strength? Anything else? Right. One of the things that I think always gets passed off as a maybe not so much of a strength, Brian is athletic. Okay, that's a good one. Home, school communication. Brian is curious individual. Brian has diverse interests. Strong mom, energetic. Yes, yes. Uh, Brian is a leader. Family mealtime. Yes, somebody got it. Yes. All right. Anything else you all see? All righty. So, what we do with this when we are working with family support specialists, Brian has a friend, yes, is we do kind of what we just did with you guys. But what happens is we put them in their breakout groups and we get them to find as many strengths as they can. And we follow Tanya from day one of the course all the way to the end. Things change, things happen, and we keep going back because it gives people an opportunity to practice those skills that they've learned.
So, in Tennessee, why do you become certified? And why is that important? And these may be similar reasons in your state, or you may have others. The most important thing is certification provides agencies with staff who are qualified to begin work as a family support specialist. And that's critical. Agencies do their own training on processes, but to have staff join you that really understand the role of being a peer support is critical oftentimes. It also gives agencies the opportunity to think about, do I want to develop contracts with my state's managed care organization? In Tennessee, if you are certified by the Tennessee Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services, which means you're trained and you passed a competency test, you can bill TennCare, or it might be Medicaid in your state, for those services. That path to sustainability can be so critical for agencies when you're looking for, how can I really fund this critical service? And I want to maintain a high level of care for people that we provide services to. And so this is beyond grants. And you know, when you're grant driven, sometimes grants sunset. And then if it sunsets, what happens with your workforce? And most importantly, the services to the families you're serving. So let's look at what we looked at to develop a competency course. We're going to go over each of these components individually and dive deeper into them. The eligibility standards we used were those developed by our Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services, and they coincide with the competencies developed by the Federation of Families. We had a collaborative process, and it was with the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services. It was with NAMI, Tennessee, and it was with Family Support Specialists Coalitions and Family Support Specialists across the state. So we did not do this in a vacuum. We tried to really look at and have input from as many people and folks that we could. So, who is eligible in Tennessee? And this might be different with who is eligible in your state. In Tennessee, you have to be a Tennessee resident. I don't know what your state may think. You have to have a child with a mental health diagnosis or be the caregiver of a child with a mental health diagnosis. So that's pretty broad. Some states look at it differently, where if you grew up with a family and were a family member, but in Tennessee, you have to be the caregiver. You need to be a caregiver that has the most important thing, lived experience with navigating systems for needed services. Parents come to us looking for peer support because they put their head down at night and sometimes they're in tears and they don't know where to turn or what to do next. And it is that peer that helps them learn the systems and navigate them successfully. To become certified, you do have to work or volunteer for at least 6 months, focusing on activities that peer support folks do. To take the course, you have to have a prerequisite course first, so everything just doesn't hit you all at once. The prerequisite courses in Tennessee are parent to parent that really focuses on being an advocate to meet your child's needs. Also, you can take NAMI Basics or any of the NAMI classes looking at parenting and what that impact on parents of raising a child with mental health challenges. You have to commit to a full week, 40 hours of training. It's done all at once. We evaluate after every class to see, is this the best way to provide this, to get feedback from participants. You have to agree to being willing to share your lived experience based on what helps the family. They don't want to know your trauma drama. They want to know that you survived this through, too, that you had similar feelings, and that they can make it. Maybe not perfect, but they can do it. And do they qualify for a scholarship? I'm going to talk more about scholarships. Our state has had scholarships, and more people take the class. Scholarships are limited right now, and less people are taking the class. And so, whoever funds this course, it's important we look at that issue separately. I want you to look at this very last statement. We do allow individuals who are not seeking certification to take the class, but they have to pay the usual and customary cost. And we have folks who have found the class so valuable because after each day, we give a string of resources with each day of the class. And they find those resources and the approaches we discuss so helpful in working with families. So, what are the requirements? We kind of went over this. You have to be 18. You have to self identify as a caregiver or a parent. You have to have the experience of system navigation, the prerequisite course. You have to have a GED, high set diploma, or higher. And it is so interesting of late. We have people with PhDs who take this class because being a peer support is so important to them conceptually in helping families. It's interesting. We require state residency. You may not. You do have to have the supervision of a master level mental health professional. You do not provide clinical services, none at all, a peer support, but you have to have that supervision. And we require that within 1 year of taking the course, you apply for certification. And we had data, and I didn't put that here, but more and more people are getting their certification.
Okay, so let's talk about what is a certified family support specialist. So, this is Tennessee's definition. A certified family support specialist is a person who has self identified as a birth parent, adoptive parent, foster parent, or authorized caregiver of a child or youth with an emotional, behavioral, mental health, substance use challenges, co-occurring disorders, and or autism spectrum disorder, which we just added. Thank you, and who has successfully been able to navigate the child serving systems to access treatment and resources necessary to build resiliency and foster success in the home, the school, and the community. This individual has successfully completed training recognized by the Tennessee Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services on how to assist other caregivers in fostering resilience in their children based on principles of residency and recovery. The family support specialist, they walk right beside that family. They are there. They have done it. They have walked the walk, and they're there to help other families be able to walk the walk. This is that definition. Kathy has shared earlier on the screen um, that this can be a lot to explain to somebody. And we in the class we kind of help people to understand, how do you tell somebody what you do. But a family support specialist are personally invested, collaborative problem solvers with lived experience. Kathy had that on the screen earlier. I think that sums it up beautifully. That's what we do every single day in the work that we do. And we just want to ensure that when people are out there doing the work, they have the tools to be able to do that, the support to be able to do that. Like Kathy said, every day they get a packet of resources. Well, not a packet anymore because we do a lot of them virtual, but they get resources to help them be able to support the families in their community. That is the power of the peer. All right, so let's talk about the different roles that an FSS may have. So lots of them can be very different, right? So you may have somebody that does direct caregiver to caregiver support with families, maybe some in-home type services. You may have somebody that's a caregiver educator, where they do trainings for groups or one-on-one. Kathy mentioned earlier about the parent to parent, NAMI basics, all of those things. Somebody has to do it. Who better than the peer, right? Support group facilitators, people who are there to help through the process. I don't know about you guys, but it is tough having children or a child with a mental health diagnosis, and support groups are powerful tools. And there are other relevant experiences or things that caregivers, that family support specialists can do. I want you guys to keep in mind that there are so many roles now that an FSS may have. In Tennessee, it is exploding in the places that family support specialists or FSSs work. They're in pediatrician offices now, schools, all these different places. We're there to help support families and parents.
Hey,
All right.
let's jump into how we developed the competency course. We looked at what is the subject material. Again, thanks to the Federation, we have the 5 competency. Additionally, the approach to our training embodies system of care values and principles. That means we emphasize a family driven, youth guided, community based, culturally and linguistically responsible philosophy in serving all the families that we work with. We stress holistic needs. We know because of the ACEs study of positive characteristics of parenting, the mind and body connection, and how critical that is. So that's what we decided. That's what we want in our competency course. And a piece of that then was you can't just talk about it, you have to have the how to's. So it's highly experiential. Monique shared, we take Tanya all the way through and the ups and downs that life give you and different scenarios, and have each participant look at that and what that means. Implementation process. Who has to approve your curriculum? Hopefully it's more than just you. With us, it was the state steering committee, the FSS steering committee, and the department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services. We know that there are lots of complex systems out there. And is your approval process or approach going to be direct? Meaning, whoops, you're going to hit the ground now and start doing it? Or is it going to be phased? We're going to try it in this part of the state, then we're going to try it here. Are you going to pilot a few areas? Those are individual decisions. We already had a competency course that we had developed. So after it was approved, we switched totally and began doing the new competency course. I cannot tell you, every time the laws change, we just made an update. The laws change relating to children. You have to update your course, but that's not a total rewriting. We had departments change names. We had to update the course with the new department, child serving department, and what they do. So not only do you have to think about implementation initially, but you have to think about ongoing and whose responsibility is that going to be. Most critically is how are you going to engage participants? Uh, and how are you going to have participants demonstrate their ability to perform a task, a role? Are you going to do role enactments? Are you going to have small group activities? Are there going to be practice, document completion, problem solving, polls? We have all of that. And the reason why we have all of that, we have 5 days of training. And you can't do the same thing over and over to make sure you're touching people in a way. If you look at the adult learning theories, we know that you have to do it visually, verbally, and kinesthetically or through action. And you have to use different techniques all through the class. Our testing confirms competency. The big issue is you have to have 80% of the questions we ask you pass or correct. We use practice tests to get people, participants, familiar with how we are going to test. Um, it's all multiple choice, but some folks have a lot of test anxiety. So we talk about it a lot. We give them practice and get them prepared. We have a pool of 100 or more questions, and we do a new test with every group. The reason why we do a new test for every group is so it's not shared and we know that individual is the one completing the answers. The test is automatically graded. We don't, and you'll want a system with all the Microsoft forms, that's no problem. We also evaluate every participant that is in class on whether they have the skills to really work as an FSS. You may want a proctor system. We used to do it in person, but then COVID hit and now everything's virtual. And when it's virtual, do you want a proctor system? on your computer so you know that is the individual taking the class. We're going to hustle because we're running out of time.
All righty. So let's talk a little bit about approaches. So at the beginning of each day, you want to have some type of activity that encourages participants to share. So just kind of like we did with you guys, put your information in the chat, do this, right? Well, we do those things out loud. We want them to get accustomed to talking to us, sharing with us, because again, like Kathy said, we have to evaluate them. And the only way we can is by having interaction with them. And so that's why every day, every single day during that 40 hours, they have activities. We have the single, and we talked about this, that single case vignette that progresses through the training. Something happens to them each time. DCS is called. They want to move, they want to change school. Something happens each time. And that gives the participants an opportunity to use the skills that they've learned, because whatever skill we learn for that day, we're going to put it into that vignette for that day. They're going to be able to practice their skills, and it keeps everybody moving, right? Because we go into breakout rooms, we do all of these things to make the approach stay interesting. Let's see. We also, and this is one of my favorite parts, we have the participants present a portion of the training. So each time we pick out small snippets of the training and we give it to the participants, and they have to train us. That goes back to all of the different roles that you can do as an FSS. So we want to give them the opportunity to do those pieces as well. And again, those resource guides. They are at the end of every day, they give resource guides related to whatever subject that we talked about. All right, Kathy, next slide for me.
So let's look at the length of training. It's a lot of factors that impact that. Are you going to do first, you decide how many hours your training is. So you know how many days it's going to take. Are you going to do it in one session, multiple sessions? What authority do you have to do the training, and is it mandated? You want to make sure, no matter how long your training is, participants can ask questions and material is covered. Because of the testing, you have to make sure you cover all the key topics. We were going to have you do a brain break, but we don't have time for that. But in addition to breaks, to keep the energy level high, we do brain breaks, which are just quick. And what I was going to have you do was A, E, I, O, you. But we don't have time for that. Okay, Monique.
Right. Kathy loves a brain break. And it keeps everybody going. So let's talk about qualifications of the trainer. They should be a subject matter expert combined with a strong communication skills. They should be empathetic and have adaptability to create a supportive and engaging learning environment. They should also be organized and patient, because guess what? Things can go wrong, things can go sideways. Sometimes you have to move things around. But these on the screen, you see the list. Expertise, communication, adaptability, all of these things are important to be a good trainer. And because you're going to have a co-trainer, having a good compatibility with your co-trainer is really important. All right, next slide, Kathy. I know we gotta pick it up. So let's talk a little bit about in-person venues. If you're doing them in person, you want to make sure that the location is a centralized location. If you're going to do lunch on your own, you want to make sure it's in a location where people can get to like fast food or whatever the case may be really quickly so that they can get their lunch, get back, right? You want to make sure there's enough space. You want to make sure there are comfortable chairs and tables so that people can be able to write and be okay. Of course, you want to look at the budget. Try to find a free space, a library, a community center, things like that. And then you also want to make sure that any facility you use is disability friendly. You want to ensure that. Making sure that if you're going to do breakout sessions, can you do that? Do you have space for that? So these are some of the things that you want to ensure that you pay attention to when you are doing in-person trainings. If your agency has a space, great. But sometimes they don't, and you have to look outside of your agency to be able to do this. All right. Uh, and please, please, please confirm they have good, clean bathrooms. I know that may not seem important to everybody, but it is. You want to have decent, clean bathrooms. All right. Let's talk about virtual trainings.
Oh, did
So,
you say the disability access?
yes. Yes. All right. So we all know about all the different virtual training venues because after COVID, well, sorry, during COVID, we learned them very quickly. Zoom is popular, it's a popular choice. It often does require additional tools, like you need a full Zoom account. You don't want one of those free ones that cut you off at 45 minutes or whatever it is. Microsoft Teams, it works really well with the Microsoft 365 ecosystems that most businesses they already have and you're already using. Big Blue Button, which I do not know a lot about, but it is used by a lot of educational systems or in colleges and universities. So that is another one. It has a lot of interactive features, including being able to proctor. So that's another one. And then Adobe Connect. It offers intensive, customized, and high security for large enterprise level trainings. So based off your budget, based off what you already have available. If you already have Teams or you already have Zoom, it is no sense in recreating a wheel and going out and trying to purchase Adobe Connect or any of those things. You want to be able to use what you're already familiar with. You want to be able to, when you are doing this, use those breakout rooms. You also want to make sure you have reliable internet services. The worst thing, and I'm sure you all have been in a meeting, when somebody's in the middle of a train, they just go back, and you're like, what in the world is happening, right? So you want to ensure that the internet, you have high internet connection. You know how to use all of those wonderful tools that they have, the polls, the quizzes, the whiteboards, chats, Q&A, because those things make those trainings more interactive. So you want to ensure that you're using all of those things. All right. Also, one more thing, and then I'm gonna pass it to Kathy so she can bring us home, is ensuring that during trainings, whether it's virtual or in person, that people know when breaks are gonna happen and that they know when lunch is going to happen. It is really important that you have a good agenda and people know what's happening. I like to check things off. I'm a check the list type of person. Everybody's not, but I think it's important that people know what happened and that they get to take breaks, even if it's a brain break.
Okie dokie, frequency of training. That's influenced by so many factors. It can be what's the demand in your state? How many people do you think will want this training? And what's the time frame that they need the training by? What is your structure? We discussed, is it going to be virtual live? Is it how many days? And who is going to train this? What is the availability of training? And along with who is going to train this, what are the qualifications you want of trainers? I think that's gonna be critical to know what you need to do. Your options can be weekly, bi-monthly, quarterly, monthly, biannually. That's influenced by your volume, the area you're going to cover, and what that means for you. Um, that's up to you. And for you to decide what you think your outcomes will be. Here is a biggie. Cost of training and funding approaches. That's an important piece of the planning. And in planning that, what does your time and expertise cost? If you're a state agency, you may be assigned it, and that's covered. What's going to be the cost of your materials? Do you have to develop it? And developing a curriculum takes time, energy, knowledge, and skill, and a lot of input and collaboration. What's your venue? Live, virtual, a mix? Maybe you do some of both. If it's live, are you going to serve refreshments or lunch? Or are you going to need to accommodate time for people to go out? How are you going to promote your training? Who are the people you're going to reach out to? Last month, I reached out to over 4,000 different people to share about the training. Tennessee's a big state, and you don't know everybody that might be interested in it. And so it takes whoever, you have to decide who's going to do the outreach, the promotion, what supplies, if you're going to do it in person, travel, and do you have the software and technology you need to reach the most people successfully? We have found we've tried Teams, and not everybody could navigate Teams as well as they could to Zoom. And I think in part in Tennessee, it was because during COVID, a lot of churches use Zoom, and they had it and they were used to using it and comfortable, particularly in smaller areas. So we use Zoom pretty much exclusively. But if you're going to only do it with one particular system, whatever system technology that system uses is probably what you would want to use. So, funding approaches. We're a private, not-for-profit agency that does the competency training for the public agency in Tennessee. And so we rely on departmental grants, training grants, institutional support, like from the other big agencies, co-sponsors, grant application, and cost service sharing. We have limited scholarships now, and not everybody gets a scholarship. So sometimes participants themselves share. And thank you, Gail, for telling me 10 minutes was left. Now we have 5 minutes, but we want to open this up for questions, please.